I'm Janeane. This is KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine. And standing by to join me is author Amy B. Chesler. She's going to share details on her new book, Working for Justice, One Family's Tale of Murder, Betrayal, and Healing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
What does it feel like your book comes out and we're in a pandemic?
Oh my goodness. I don't even know if I can verbalize that. I also went through a divorce in the pandemic. It was quite a year
Amy.
and I moved. It was definitely a big year. But I feel like, I don't know, I think sometimes timing is serendipitous, and it felt like that to me a bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't know if I shared this mantra with you. I tend to tell my guests this mantra: sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever happened.
Yes.
Doesn't always hold true, but a lot of times, like, you went through the storm of your divorce, but look now, the birth of your book.
Yes. And, yeah, and the topic, of course, I hope sometimes it's hard for me to swallow that everything happens for a reason, but I do believe that something good comes out of everything. Absolutely.
Right.
So even out of my mom's murder, I'm getting to tell this story, and I'm creating a community for a lot of people that need it. So that's something very beautiful out of something awful. So I absolutely agree with you to a certain extent too.
At what point did you decide you wanted to share your personal story and put it out there?
Oh, goodness. Probably in 4th grade. No, I mean, I've always known I wanted to be a writer.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes, always. And I was published in 4th grade. I had teachers really early on believing in my voice and the use of it.
Right.
But every single person said, you got to write what you know. And obviously at that age, I had no idea what I knew. And even as time went on and I went through a very volatile life, and kind of passed, I still didn't know. And then once I got out of the thick of things and, removed myself from a domestically violent situation and started to really heal, that's when I knew that part of my healing is storytelling. And I think it's really important. I found I empowered myself with it, and I empowered other people the more I shared. And that was my turning point where, like, okay, I really have to turn this into a book already.
Yes.
It's about 6 years ago, probably. Took a while.
So you were writing your book and going through a divorce at the same time?
I actually, I wrote it a while before.
Okay.
Or I started writing it. I did not write the whole thing. And I got lost because the topic was so personal to me. I was so attached to it. I couldn't really separate myself from the story itself. I needed help. So I stopped writing that and wrote a bunch of other stuff about parenting and movies and fun stuff.
Good.
Yeah. And then when I went through my divorce, I went, now is the time to actually tell my story authentically, because I think I needed to, that was the final step to my healing and to my actually just being able to live authentically.
Yes.
And that was really pinnacle to telling my story.
It's almost like, maybe I'm wrong, but you had a sense of freedom. You had the freedom to just be you, tell your story. There's nobody judging. And that's what good writing is. It's just letting it out there and true, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I find that too, like, people that aren't writers, I call it like the American Idol syndrome, where you're not a singer, but you can slam somebody to the ground with your words, right? Same with writing or anything, you don't go for it. You're not creative, but boy, you can rip somebody to shreds.
I actually believe also, I think everybody has a story. Not everybody is a storyteller. But I feel like the people that are storytellers have the onus of responsibility in doing that. And whether it's through art or dance or song or writing, absolutely. I think that we have, we hold a lot of power. With great power comes great responsibility, and the pen is mightier than the sword. I love idioms, obviously, but so put those together and you have a lot of responsibility and power.
It's great. So let's jump into the book. Tell us a little bit about it without giving too much away, because this really happened to you.
So this, my book, Working for Justice, is about my mom's murder, which took place in Calabasas, California, kind of a city, a little bit of infamy, around 13 going on 14 years ago. It was the culmination of a rather domestically violent situation. And although her murderer was, captured that evening, the criminal justice proceedings after that were pretty tedious and torturous. So my book kind of carries the reader through that night that her, chapter 1, the killer may still be inside, begins that night. And then, and that was not how I framed the book originally. And that's the help I needed, because really the justice seeking process, what is the meat of the story. And without giving away too much, it just took years. And we're actually already looking at parole. Wow. 9.5 years after conviction. So
where were you the night this happened?
I was at work. Again, this is not giving away that much either, because I mentioned in chapter 1.
Yeah.
But a lot of people will go, oh, your dad? No, that's such a societal assumption. But my brother was rather abusive, and he is the one that took my mom's life. So we lived together, the three of us. Okay. I was 22. I had just graduated college. My bosses, it was such a weird time for me. My bosses were Corey Feldman and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, so random.
You should have said Arnold.
Yeah, yes. He was, it was wonderful.
I don't mean to make a stupid joke, by the way.
No, no, it's okay. But yeah, so I was working, and again, he was violent towards both of us. So it was kind of like I was seeking like my life outside of my home, out of this very detrimental situation. So I was kind of throwing myself into my work. I was there that night, and like the worst of abuse sometimes happens. They kind of knew I was going to be gone that evening. And yeah, so I came home to find her. And
you found her.
I did. It was,
whoa,
like you said, the worst part of my life. I don't think it can never be the best, but good things may come from it, hopefully. And something I didn't mention, and a goal with my book, is I try to bring kind of the humanistic side. True crime is really big right now. It kind of, that statement a little bit, as a victim, it kind of makes me gag, but I can't, it's fascinating. I know my mom was kind of a true crime junkie as well. And it just, for me to have to translate our story into a true crime memoir is kind of mind-blowing. And yeah, I'm a little flustered at the moment just talking about it.
No, it's fine. I'm thinking, since your mom enjoyed that, I bet she'd be honored and so proud.
I think her greatest tenet in life, her mission was to always, things happen, right. No life is perfect. She shared, and her kind of philosophy on parenting was not to kind of shelter me from much, not that she shoved me into things, but she told me true, stories about her life, which I laced into the book. And what I was about to get at, actually, that I kind of lost track, but I do lace in her diary entries as well, because she thought it was important for me to kind of just be prepared for anything in life. And here I am.
That's amazing that she was so open with you like that.
She was my best friend, that's for sure. And
beautiful.
It would have been developed even further, but I was only 22. So I definitely appreciated her by those years, for sure.
Amazing. What a blessing to be that connected all along, because some mother-daughters are not.
No, I absolutely. I think, that's another thing that life, and I'm sure you can attest to this, but when awful things happen to us, sometimes if we have, you can make the choice to just say like, okay, that was really awful, but now I can see that life on the regular is so beautiful. There's so much to be grateful for on a day-to-day basis.
I always say we have two roads, the negative road with the thoughts and behaviors, and the positive path. And sometimes we think we're going down positive, but we end up going down negative that's kind of disguised, and you do something to hurt yourself or overdo something because you're emotionally hurting. I lost a friend of mine 10 years ago, which is how I started the show. And, and then you kind of figure it out like, no, I got to switch paths, pivot, go a different direction, work on myself. How did you move through this grief?
That was actually a question someone posed to me that night. Like, how are you going to get through this? And, of course, that night I was like, I don't know.
Oh, come on. Yeah.
But that's a question I've gotten
Yeah.
so many times where people are like, how do you, um, gosh, I was just reared to be a super positive person. It sounds weird because the
No,
first
it
people,
doesn't. It's maybe your mom was like that.
oh, she was, whether life kind of knocked her down a lot or not. I saw it in her actions and definitely her words that yes, you pick yourself up and dust yourself off. All right. A funny little thing, it just illustrates my mom perfectly. I ran in 6th grade for, I wrote it in my book, treasurer, and I lost miserably. Like, I was the only kid who didn't get a runoff. And when I got home, she said, "I'm so sorry. What are you going to run for next year?" And that's what I did every year. And I lost every year. But
Oh.
I learned, and I have friends who wanted to be a writer, and they're like, just how did you do it? And I go, you just keep pitching, because people are going to say no.
That's
People are
right.
going to say no to you a million times. You have to be okay with rejection,
Yes.
which is never really fully rejection unless you give up.
Yes.
It's just a test or a pivot or a point of,
Yes.
challenge.
I once wrote this blog entry on this show blog, "Dear Rejection, thank you," because you do learn so much from all those rejections. And sometimes after a while, you're like not taking it personally, just using it fuel for your fire.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a best friend who it was very hard for her to like take edits, and I would say, I love it. To be honest, in this process, people have told me, don't read the reviews of my book, and that I love it. And even if it's, not a stellar review or whatnot, which I've pretty much all of them have been, I love to hear people's perspective of my story. It's okay if they have a different one, or if they have a criticism. I'm, it's important to kind of be stalwart and heal yourself enough to be kind of impervious to other people's opinions.
Right. Exactly.
And I think I needed to be at that point in order to write my book as well.
What advice would you give to someone who has gone through something really traumatic? I mean, I just want to say, when I asked you about grief, like, I don't believe we ever get over stuff. I think we move forward, but it's okay. It's a personal thing. Grief is very personal.
I was just having this conversation with a friend. I read something saying grief is circular, and I don't believe that. I don't think we'll ever be exactly where we start. You're never going to arrive exact, but I think it's a spectrum. And I think, years, days, everything is different. So it kind of, we slide up and down. And it's just important, and to kind of thoroughly answer your question a little bit better, I think it's important to just know what heals you specifically. Yes. I love talk therapy. My degree is in psychology. I started my master's in marriage and family therapy, dropped out very quickly because I was like, oh, I needed to understand my family. I don't want to, but I think it's important. I know therapy helps me. If it's with a good therapist. I know group therapy. I know dancing and cooking, and you just have to, I don't know if it's self-care or just, knowing what you need, but you gotta deliver. And also knowing that your happiness is internal. I think that's really important. And allowing for the grief to ebb and flow.
And being kind to yourself. I mean, we're allowed to have bad days. I had a day this week, I was really down. I was like feeling like I'm working so hard and things aren't really going where I wanted to go. And I was just really bummed out. And then I'm like, you know what? Just go cook something, like make something homemade and something healthy, because I know from being a junk food person years ago, that doesn't work. It's temporary. So just being kind to you is really important.
Absolutely. That's what I mean, like allowing for the grief to ebb and flow. And if you have a hard day, allowing for it. It's so important. And understanding, I think a lot of people just try to move through the grief. And that kind of perpetuates it longer. I think confronting it, I wrote in my book, like, how did you get through it? You know what? I told my story. First, I started with a live piece, which is kind of what spurred my book. I got such intense feedback and such lovely words from everybody involved that I just, I started trying to formulating it into something else. And it's just about allowance, I think.
Well, that's great that you took that first step to do it as a live piece. Some people might not have done that.
I think I knew I needed it in my heart. People are like, you're so brave. Actually, some of my, all of this storytelling, it's selfish too. It really, every time I tell my story, I feel lighter. It doesn't have as much control over me as, it might have once done. So I think it's all habitual. And as long as you just kind of shift the thought patterns and the habits.
Yes. But it's not really fully selfish, because when you think about the person that might be watching this conversation that's been bottling it up, Amy, you've given them an opportunity to go, you know what, maybe it's time. I've had epiphanies from guests on my show that made me realize, like, you know, maybe I need to let that go. Or maybe I need to work on that.
That's so powerful. And you know what? Our family history was just covered by like one of the top true crime podcasts in the world. And the response after that was just so intense. So many people coming out saying, reaching out to me going, I didn't even know I was abused. I didn't know sibling abuse was a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even know the name. Now I know that I'm not, I'm not manufacturing an ill kind of relationship, or it's been really amazing the power I've kind of allowed other people just by being myself. It kind of almost all started, to be honest. I was on the playground once talking to a woman, and I don't know, it was I had my first child, and I was in the throes of grief, becoming a mother without a mother, and not really knowing what to do. And I just told this random stranger at the park that my mom was killed. I don't know what. Heard the conversation. She goes, "My dad killed my mom, and he was a cop. He got he never went even in prison." And we just bonded instantly. And she gave me this group called Children of Murdered Parents on
Facebook. About that.
And then I shared about that book about that group in my book, and I've already got messages like, oh my gosh, I never knew there was that space for me. And thank you so much for illuminating.
So, because you opened up to a stranger at a park.
Well, I'm finding every time I do something I wrote in my book that I fully believe is that I don't think loose lips sink ships. I think that they are, communication brings catharsis, 100%.
I bet.
I think that's such an archaic way of thinking that, like, keep it tight. No, let it out. It feels really good, and it helps other people.
You got to change that. Loose lips create friendships or something.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
There you go. But it's true though, because I feel like, especially now with the pandemic, I have met hundreds of strangers by doing this, by flipping my show and making it on camera if they feel comfortable. And the conversations you have face to face are so different than audio.
Oh, 100%. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. What else would you like people to know about your book without giving too much away?
Oh, goodness. It's weird. We were just talking about, having hard days. Right before my book came out, I had a really hard day. I just wanted a hug from my mom. So, and then the book came out and everything felt lovely. And then 10 days later, I found out my brother is up for parole in August. So really, my goal was to tell our story, to bring awareness. Now it's more, I have a huge sense of urgency in getting it out because I think that our story represents huge travesties that occur, no matter what political leaning or whatever, they just occur because of the system. And I think that I would love people to heed, to take in our story and try to support, some changes that could perhaps really benefit victims and alike, and also my hope is to kind of bring a humanistic side to the true crime community. I think that we kind of objectify. One of the reviews about my book was so lovely. It said, the true crime community kind of objectifies things and moves on. And that's okay because it's facts and, they want to know but my book, to her, she said it kind of brought the humanistic side, and also just to bring the victims, it's so rare that a victim's perspective is offered.
Yes.
And I would hope people leave themselves open to that, and letting our story move them, and hopefully maybe signing a petition to keep my brother in prison in the next couple months.
Is he older than you?
He is, 3 years older.
Okay.
I was kind of always the older sibling, though. If mom left the house, she'd be like, okay, Amy, make sure he doesn't burn it down, which was a possibility.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Where can people find out more about you and your book?
I have a website, amybchesler.com. Although, unfortunately, I've had some issues with it in the last month or two. They can find me on all platforms, Amy B. Chesler, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. They can find my book on Amazon or any major book outlet that sells them.
Great.
Yeah, and they can reach me. I answer direct messages if anyone wants to. I have been working so much. I love to receive other people's stories, even if they're tragic.
Yeah.
I'm in a good space where that's almost part of my mission.
Good.
So if anyone wants to reach out and be like, this is something I've gone through,
Yeah.
thank you for.
You're very compassionate and empathetic. You really are.
I try to be, I'm not always, but everyone has their moments. Thank you very much. It's a very kind thing to say. I appreciate that.
You are. I put all your information on my show blog, which is getthefunkoutshow.kuci.org.
The best name ever. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. So be well. Congratulations. And this was fantastic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you, Janeane. You're wonderful.